What an important play about how oil lobbyists hindered the fight against climate change back in the 90s. Thank God they don't do that nowadays, right? Right? We are living in a day and age where we are seeing the effects of climate change more and more. It is hard to deny the negative effect that climate change is having on our planet now. And the more negative effects we see of fossil fuels and burning them and what that's doing to our planet, the less it feels like we're able to fight back and do something. And when you're thinking about your future and your children's future and what kind of planet we're leaving behind for them, you have to sit and wonder, when was the point where we had to do something? If what we're doing now feels like too little too late. And the sad fact of the matter is that we have known about climate change for a very, very long time. And a play like Kyoto shows the first steps that we took as a planet, as countries coming together to fight back against climate change. And despite how small these steps were, how difficult it was to do these, thanks to the influence and power of oil lobbyists like Don Perlman. So, how does Kyoto present this issue? And how does it feel to look back on this history now? Does it present it successfully? Let's find out. But if you haven't seen my face before, hi, I'm Ellie. I talk about theatre. I am the most chaotic theatre person on the internet. I do reviews, I do discussions, I do versus brackets and tier lists, and if any of that sounds interesting to you, please consider hitting like and subscribe. It really helps me, it helps out the channel. But let's dive into Kyoto at Soho Place. The play Kyoto is about the creation of COP. This council made up of representatives from hundreds of countries across the world, and how they came together to fight against climate change. It starts from the very start of these discussions to Kyoto's COP3, where the first targets were laid out. And this whole play centers itself around Don Perlman, which, when you look at a play like this is not the perspective that you really want to be on the side of. Perlman is someone who we would look at now and see as a climate change denier. He was massively influenced by the oil lobby and was essentially their man on the inside, trying to pull apart these deals, pull apart these targets, and stop these negotiations from getting anywhere. As a lawyer, he used a lot of his skills and legal loopholes to find ways to make it harder and harder for these countries to come together to create a solution against climate change, which would then benefit the oil lobby. As I kind of hinted at in the start, this still feels very sadly modern. We are still very much feeling the effects of these very powerful lobbies, these people, these companies and CEOs with a lot of money who have a lot to lose from countries taking action against climate change. From an initial gut feeling, you want to be on the side of the change, of these countries coming together, of this unity between the world, seeing an issue and coming together to fight it. You want to be on the side of the UK, of Germany, of someone like Raul Estrada, who as the chairman of COP3 came together and somehow narrowly negotiated a deal. However, this play does not place you there. And I think it's very interesting to see this play from his perspective, especially as an unreliable narrator. He's not the one you want to be telling you this story, yet he is. And I think it allows a lot of this debate to unfold. And I think there's a very interesting way to approach it. I think there's always a hope throughout this play that a figure like Perlman might see the error of his ways. And I think what it also does is it allows you to see exactly how these type of people try to sway the debate. How they delay and pick apart the finest, tiniest little loophole they can to stop real change from happening. People like Don Perlman still exist. People like Don Perlman are still influencing this debate. it. And people like Don Perlman are still stopping the progress against climate change. This play thrives, especially in the political back and forth. As you're seeing the bigger countries, the countries who are contributing the most to climate change, who are burning the most fossil fuels, who are creating the most CO, who are damaging the environment the most, fail to come to the table with proper and clear solutions and clear targets and promises to back down, and how this affects the countries who have the most to lose. There's a real pettiness to a lot of this arguing, and I think that makes for some fantastic drama on stage, as you see a lot of the egos and the figures get in the way of the real issue here. And some of the most hard-hitting moments, some of the most affecting moments of this piece of theatre are the moments where you see, for lack of a better word, and using a lot of the terminology that this play uses, these smaller and less developed countries taking a stand on the world stage against the big players. These countries who are seeing the effects of climate change, who are not burning fossil fuels at the extravagant rates of the US, but could see people die, but could see their world and their homes destroyed because of what climate change is doing. And these moments where the representatives of these countries get their time to say their piece, to stand their ground, and to illuminate the issue, especially when this place centers us so much around a figure like Don Perlman, a figure who comes from a lot of privilege, a figure who is being paid to essentially destroy the environment. It's so vitally important that you have the other side of it, that you have these characters who are firmly fighting their ground. It's a careful balance that Kyoto kind of has to play as it develops the story, especially so it underlines the exact type of figure we're seeing in Don Perlman. As the drama continued to unfold, as they go from debate to debate with so little actually being achieved, I was so engrossed in the drama and the fight of a lot of these countries to make real change, and how easy it is for a figure like Perlman to deflect, to hide, to focus in on one word at a time, one tiny word as part of a sentence, a declaration, to completely destroy its impact, to make it easier for less action to be done. There's fantastic moments in this play where it's back and forth between the people against climate change and the people who don't see it as a real issue, like Perlman, fighting over one word as part of a document, throwing back and forth these adjectives between each other. It's pages of dialogue in the script. Pages upon pages where they're fighting over one single word. And the sleaziness of a figure like Perlman, how he weaves himself in, how he shifts the narrative, how he weakens these declarations to benefit him and his partners in the oil lobby. One of the most engaging scenes in the show is literally just a scientist and Don Perlman batting adjectives against each other. It goes on for about a full minute as a scientist pitches one word, only for Perlman to come in with complete opposite. You see him putter all over this space, constantly putting his hand in there like he's Dolly Levi. I don't know if that joke's gonna reach the audience that we're going for here. Any big Hello Dolly fans in? Handing over notes, finding little loopholes. Despite him not actually being at the table in this conference, not having a word, he has got so much presence there, and therefore the oil lobby have so much presence on these debates. But nonetheless, despite his fiddling and his meddling, it's the passion from countries like Kiribati, from countries like Tanzania, these strong and impactful monologues that really do stand out. Joe Murphy and Joe Robertson's writing at times almost becomes comedic because of how quickly these debates fall, because of how one word leads to hours and hours of debate. And I think once you get over that initial comedy of it, you realize the seriousness of it. You realize how damaging that is, how much time is wasted over little words instead of actually making significant change. A play like this illustrates exactly how we found ourselves in a situation like where we are now. We're even almost 2 decades after the first steps were put in place, we still don't really feel like we have made enough of a dent, enough of a change. And it's heartbreaking how difficult it is for them to even get the slightest bit of change because of influences like Pullman. I think history shines a light on where we are. History is so important to look back on, and a play like this illustrates exactly where we are now. I mean, literally, the day I'm sitting down to film this is the day that President Trump is being inaugurated again in the US. His first inauguration saw him take the US out of the Paris Climate Agreement. And it's very likely that a second Trump term will see him do the exact same thing again. We are still seeing strong climate denial from figures in these high places. We are still seeing attitudes like Don Perlman's today. And that's why, on the whole, I am kind of glad they tell this story from Perlman's perspective. So you can see exactly the type of person he is, while still giving these hero moments to the people who fought back and to the people who worked hours and hours to put these targets into effect. People like Raul Estrada. It's a very powerfully written piece of theatre that uses these very engrossing debates to shine a light on where we were then and where we are now. And what's more, I think this is elevated by a lot of the direction, the staging, and the design of this show. In a space like Soho Place, we are in for a quite intimate telling of this story. Stephen Daldry and Justin Martin staged this entire piece around one table, the stage being turned into this table-esque design, where amongst the audience, these politicians and these figures sit. You are amongst them. You are a part of them. You're even given a lanyard to wear as you walk into the theatre and sit down to further immerse yourself into this story and to give yourself a bit more of an identity. The bigger moments are the ones that are placed on stage, front and center. Oftentimes, we're seeing Pullman mill and move throughout the space using that stage and standing front and center, often highlighting his power and his presence within these debates, and how he ebbs and flows and becomes here and there and everywhere. The centerpiece of the stage often being used to highlight a status and a power, and sometimes where this shifts, or to bring focus in. For instance, and I'm trying to be kind of loose on spoilers here, so if you don't want a huger spoiler, I would skip about 30 seconds in this review. The moment where Pullman is front and center as the articles are being approved one by one, approved, all being centered back into him as you see his disappointment, as you see his fall, as they finally come to universal agreement, something that seems like it would have been impossible. I love the use of projection through this show as well, often highlighting these articles, the changing of certain words, and adding a nice dynamic to this space and to the staging of this piece. It really does come together well. Finally, there's this cast, this absolutely phenomenal cast of performers. Stephen Kunken plays Don Perlman so interestingly. You're so intrigued by his stance and how he presents himself. He is extremely charismatic as a figure. He commands attention and commands a presence on stage. And there's definitely something to say about his determination. A lot of these traits and figures about Perlman are there to kind of start to align you with him. While his stance in the debate is very contrary to what mine and a lot of the audience are going to be coming in with, You are massively drawn to him as a figure. And I think a lot of that is down to the very careful portrayal from Kunken here. Despite a coldness in this debate, you see real moments where a more human side starts to come in. Whether that be his relationship with his son, his relationship with his wife, or even the kind of reluctant friendship he strikes with someone like Estrada. Speaking of Estrada, Jorge Bosch plays Raul Estrada in this show, and he is phenomenal. He starts off as this kind of bumbling figure, and his journey throughout the show is really well characterized. He's this really charming and lovable figure with such a wonderful stance on life, and he's definitely not the figure you would see at the end being the person bringing this all together, being the chairman of the committee. His yes-no game, his circle of agreement game is such a charming moment, well portrayed by Bosch, and I love how the narrative slowly shifts towards him being more of a hero in this story. As the play starts to highlight the flaws in Perlman's thinking, highlights that he's not going to change his perspective, you start to see the play shift perspective a little bit and put a lot more focus onto him, and Bosch rises to the challenge, already having you in the palm of his hands from his portrayal earlier in the show, from his kindness and charm and his energy that's so warm and inviting, so that when he becomes more of a hero, you are instantly on his side. One of my favourite portrayals in this show. Fantastic work. Gemma Organ plays Shirley. She is the wife to Don Perlman, a figure who's kind of kept to the side and almost acts as a conscience at times. Not quite sure if the side that she's found herself on because of her husband is the right one. She portrays this back and forth really, really well, adding a lot of real heart and emotion to it, and allowing us to explore a different side to Perlman as well. Some of my biggest highlight moments from the show come from two performers. Andrea Gatchelin as Kiribati delivers this really impactful and powerful speech. This moment where suddenly the status shifts, all focus is on her. Her delivery is powerful, blunt, as she firmly portrays her point and shows the real danger if a solution isn't found. A real moment where the tables turn, wonderfully portrayed by Gatchelin. And a similar moment is given to Tanzania, the representative for this country played by Aisha Kozako. The firmness and the bluntness of delivery of these two monologues from these two fantastic performers are key highlights of the show for me. And there's fantastic supporting performances all around, some highlights being from Ferdy Roberts, who portrays the UK representative John Prescott. And all I can say about his performance is that his anecdote that he delivers is very British and very charming. Kristen Atherton portrays a very stern Angela Merkel, alongside Nancy Crane, who has a really interesting dynamic with Don Perlman as the representative for the US. And the final supporting cast member I'll highlight is Togo Igawa, who plays the representative for Japan, who portrays a real humanity to how he deals with the effects of Kyoto and the effects it personally has on him when this debate doesn't go as planned. Kyoto is a very important play, highlighting the figures behind the scenes influencing the climate debate, and doing so within a thoroughly engaging and completely engrossing piece of theatre, with enthralling debates, this back and forth and this pettiness. It's a fantastic political thriller with a strong bite that I would highly recommend. But what do you think? Have you seen Kyoto, either in London at Soho Place, or at its original run in Stratford-upon-Avon at the RSC? Let me know all your thoughts on this play in the comments down below. If you did enjoy this video, please consider hitting like and subscribe. It really helps me, it helps out the channel. Here's some links to some other videos on screen right now, and a link to my Instagram if you'd like to drop me a follow over there. I also have other social links and a merch store in the description down below. But that's it for me today, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!